Gary's Zoom crashed on him, so he has to restart it. We'll be back in a minute. Hold on.
Got it. Okay, and are you going to have to reshare the screen? All right.
Pick the one you want to share.
All right, let's pick the one I want to share. We're going to start with.
You have it running already?
I do. I do, but
click show all windows maybe. You can scroll down. Look, scroll. You can scroll.
Here it is. Here it is. Okay.
No, that's not. You're not sharing that though. You just brought it up. Go back to the scroll. Hit the scroll bar.
Oh, Christ. Where did it go? There it kind of is. Let's see here.
I'm gonna zoom out the bottom.
Is that it?
Yeah, there. And then
You see a screen. What screen do you see?
This is video. It's not. He's trying to share the screen. I think you only see his video, right? He's not sharing. I'm seeing that screen.
Right.
Yeah, the whole screen. Oh.
Well, here, go.
The whole thing. Just show. Can you just run the video? Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so we're seeing it, which means if I go here and I go here, it would be.
Yeah, did you share that?
Just got out of my way.
Yeah,
now I go here. I go here. Okay. It's got the Zoom icon is in my way. I don't know why.
So do you want to make it?
I want to do a slideshow.
Go away. Click on this little bar.
No, it's the one on the top won't let me do the slideshow.
Oh, I see that.
Hang on, almost there. All right. So let's do slideshow. Any day now, any day now. All right, we're going to go back here. Try this again. Showing the start of this.
Yeah.
All right, how many people are? Yeah, I know. And it doesn't do it. So let me go up here and hit slideshow. Go ahead. Once again, here, let's maximize this guy. Maximized. True. It works when you don't need it, huh? Participants can now see the screen. Very strange.
I'm sure that guest channel is not a problem.
All right.
Can you manually go through the slideshow?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. Here,
Something like that instead of slideshow.
post attendee Zoom. I don't know why it is doing all that. Let us go to. Doesn't like this screen. I guess.
What is it that you're trying to do here?
Not much open now. It's a share, a hard share of the Wi-Fi. All right. Okay. This be my minor in Spanish, major in biology. Right. 1 second here, maybe I can show. Second try it slideshow first, but it doesn't like it. What else is open here? Anything else open?
See, I mean, that's what we want. Unless it's a political.
Okay. Still see that.
See that part? That's
Okay, I've only got the one show. It seems it will not show this and Zoom at the same time. Okay. Well,
what do you need Zoom for? Just shut this.
anything else on here? Meeting
This is
controls.
what we see, and so it looks fine to us.
I know. Well, okay, let's see. Does it advance it? See, it doesn't respond.
Should you want to use air?
Well,
Yeah, exactly.
no, I've got it on a flash drive, but he won't read a flash drive. All right. Let us. I can call this thing up easily, so I'm going to host PowerPoint. Close window. Can't even close the sucker. Okay, well. You're going to have this. Okay, can the folks hear me?
Yep.
So I'm okay.
Okay.
We can drag that far so it's at the bottom.
Drag which?
The bar, the big black bar, you can click and drag it, so it's at the bottom. Yeah, this is-
As I'm talking, how about this?
When you go over to the sidebar there, you choose the slide.
Share screen, liquid screen. will share. And
Okay.
you can scroll down.
More screen?
Yeah, there you go.
No, I want right here.
Okay, now you're sharing.
I'm sharing it, yeah, but it won't move.
You click on the sidebar over there.
Over here,
Look at it, see what happens.
So you can't bring up the second
it
slide.
won't do anything. Okay, well, apparently this computer will not do slideshow with Zoom at the same time. I will give you a graphic description of these people. Is how many people, and somebody still down there? Mary? Can you hear me, Mary?
Okay, Gary, we're gonna have to go, but I encourage people to sign up we need lobbyists. I'll send around another mention about that. We got Tuesday and Wednesday right now.
Okay,
So we might
I think-
be involved if you want to. And even if you don't want to, come and join.
Okay, and let's try to get the police or the police chief to talk to them about human rights. And, I think they need it right now. They need to be with regular people.
Right. Well, I'm apologizing, folks, but I will be giving this talk next week, Zoom line with my downstairs computer, and it will be okay. Okay. Do I still need my audio to go through the screen? Okay.
You got the
I'm gonna make up for lack of slides.
Boo.
All right. More, where is, I don't know. Okay. 2 years ago, Gayla lives in California. She works with a group called Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity, and they're working on immigration. They're working against ICE. They're working on deportations and all kinds of things. So I just leave it. It's fine. So we're going to go to Honduras. 75 faith leaders. I'm talking people. Half of us have lived in Honduras for 20 years. I'm talking priests and nuns. I'm talking human rights workers. And so we're all going down there. And the question was, why are the people fleeing to America? And we went for 10 days, and we got to go around Honduras. There's a gentleman out there named Jose Artiga, who has taken 10,000 people on trips to Central America, and he's never lost one of them. So he does a great job. And they line up everything. We were in a convento, a Catholic school with dormitory space, 2 armed guards at nighttime around the perimeter. In the afternoon, one Honduran was murdered in the next house to our compound, but we were safe. So we go down there. We all had vaccinations, and they let you in the country. And then before you can get on a plane and come back to America, you must have a test. So 25 people were there, and nobody caught COVID. And we hugged a few, but generally we wore masks. So with my daughter, 75, and we went around and we talked to a governor. We went to the U.S. Embassy. We brought farmers who had been shoved around their land and to speak right straight to the ambassador, who was a woman charged d'affaires, did not speak Spanish, and she looked pretty damn nervous. This time we went and we tried to get in to see the ambassador, and they said, no, a couple of you, but you cannot come into the embassy. So they've had it with talking to real Hondurans. So we got there, we landed in San Pedro Sula, second big, and we get on a bus and we go to the convento and we start our tour. The first thing on the tour was to go to Radio Progreso. This is the third most popular radio in the country. The government hates its gut, everything. Reports what's happening. Basically, it reports how the peasants are being kicked off their land, how the government hasn't done squat in spite of two hurricanes, and how the rich companies are basically getting minerals, doing their things, polluting things, and the government doesn't care. Now remember, 12 families run Honduras, and they have control of the president, complete control of the legislature, complete control of the courts. So we went to Radio Progreso, and they have a kind of a secure compound that could be raided anytime, but number of buildings, and their bylines are investigate, report, get. So we go in and they give us backgrounds and details, and they have posters. So one poster is Berta Cáceres would defend her land, the land of the Lenca peoples, from being flooded by a dam. A big power company really funded out controls. They were trying to build a dam and it would flood the valley and displace over 30,000 people. When they protested, they kept up the pressure, and finally came to America. She got a thing called the Goldman Award, which is a really high-level environmental defense fund. She came back to Honduras. Guys came around her family, killed her. So there's a lot of turmoil about this. She was, if you think of Archbishop Romero killed in El Salvador, she was the most high-profile Honduran, and so there's a lot of, a lot of people are concerned. And today in our Congress are three bills. One of them, called the Berta, should be suspended to the police and military until they stop doing such things and until there are investigations and there's training on human rights. Those are all stalled. There's 40. They're pretty well stalled in our Congress, just as there are similar acts about the Philippines with the same intention. If you don't stop killings, we're going to restrict your lethal aid. So the people telling us all these stories about human rights, they got murals about Jesus Christ being hung from a fruit tree. In honor of the country, but in honor of Chiquita bananas. Everywhere we went, we were fed Chiquita bananas. They had the label on them because those are the only bananas that make it to their own market, even though they got plantains and 50 other varieties from Del Monte and United Fruit. So we had talks and speeches, and then the next day we got on the bus. And a little yellow school bus. It is incredibly mountainous. So both countries have about a third of their land is considered arable, flat enough. To grow sugarcane crops. Thing that's grown increasingly by international business is called palm oil. So these palm oil trees, many of you see them, the leaves have been cut progressively and it can be somewhere up in the air. But when it reaches a certain size, bigger than your wood storage house there, Aaron, reaches a certain size, they harvest them, throw them in a truck, take them as foods in the world. And furthermore, they they kind of forced the farmers to give up their food crop land to grow oil. And of course, if you're doing that, then you're working for the international corporation, and they set the price of what your wages are. So, at any rate, Radio Progreso is very attuned to all of these. And we got to go to visit a village. Now, the first village we visited was Displaced Farmers. Unfortunately, there were 2 hurricanes about 2 years ago, and they devastated the lowlands. I'm talking, of course, many, right? And it might be called bottomland. Maybe not the best when it's flooding. But at any rate, many people living there. With the hurricanes, that the land was underwater for 2 months. All crops gone, houses basically washed away. 2 months. So they fled uphill. They fled up to the hilltops. Now, like the Philippines, there's a lot of hilltops, right? But most of them are at a high slope. So you cannot really grow the kind of crops that we would to scratch a living. Now, these hilltops were not being used, but many of them are owned by rich people. So the law states if land is not used for 5 years, well, the rich people will send up the police and they'll cut your crops down and they'll harass you and say, no, we're going to build a golf course up there someday. So the people have to deal with harassments, official harassments. And the other thing that people are growing up there is called milpa. Milpa is a term for multiple crops on the same land. And a famous agronomist said it's the best invention ever. So on the same land, they're growing corn, beans, squash. They need for a decent diet, they can grow in one patch of land. There might be a little bit of slash and burn, a little bit of let's move on after some years to the next unused land. Milpa is the way the most of the farmers are growing crops in Honduras. And they actually have to relearn because many of them who had farmland that was kind of like our farmland, they might grow 1 or 2 crops. Market. Well, if you're up on the mountain, the hilltop, no way to get the market basically, and you can only grow enough to feed yourself. So you're going to do milpa. So the title of our visit was called Vamos a la Milpa. Our visit there was to learn how they grow those crops. So we get up there and we walk up this hillside, quite steep for half an hour, and at the top there's some barbed wire. People to the top, and I got a pretty good cut on my leg from the barbed wire. And luckily, in our group were 3 young lady grad students studying the cultures of Latin America, and they had a good first aid kit, and they patched me up. Next day, and there are kind of like shacks built up. They're just more air than anything else. There's little kids all around. And here's where my slides would have come in handy. Beautiful kids. I was totally amazed how much Hondurans look like Filipinos. They truly have that equatorial substance. They got dark hair, dark eyes, brown skin. They're beautiful people. And so we go up there and some ceremonies, and then some leaders give some talks. These leaders from behind government, they say, get out of there. You can't stay there. And they're like, we have no place to go. So we went up there, visited, came down. We went to a pretty good hacienda, some buildings, some pretty good sized buildings that were taken from the drug lords. In other words, in the hills behind the buildings, they do their processing for coca or for the crops that they smuggle. And the government did crack down in the one spot, and then it was renting the buildings to an agricultural group, a human rights group. Well, weekly, they get guys coming in with guns saying, you better move back here again. You guys, I don't care if you rent it or not. This is our land and we're taking it back. So they're caught. They're still renting it, but it's endangered. Let's put it that way. So they give us talks about the mill pot. Then we went to a river.
So up here,
Oh,
we'll be right there. I'm gonna try to fix this.
oh, it almost looks like my slideshow is on your computer.
It is.
It is, or it isn't?
It's yeah, but I'm gonna try to fix this. You can go on with your talk. I'll see if I can.
Oh,
get this
but
to-
that particular screen shows. Okay. So we went to an agricultural place where they actually teach organic farming. So the 25 of us grabbed up hoes and rakes. We're raking leaves, we're putting them in a compost heap, turning them over, several compost heaps. And then we planting.
Here, on your computer.
Okay, sorry. We practice planting these crops and they're they have to reteach some of the farmers on how to grow the milpa because they may gotten fairly good at growing corn. They feed their whole family. Leads again to the farmers. Many there we go. Okay. So here's the water, and we did a little ceremony. We had us 25. We had about 25 or 50 Hondurans from the villages, and we're up there. We're wading in the stream, saying some prayers, and this time there was no military. In other words, in the visit my granddaughter and I did last July, there were no military. The previous 2 years, my daughter and I were there with 75 people, and there were 15 military guys came with full uniforms and automatic weapons and shields and the whole works. And they're taking movies of us. And they're up there and they're kind of all standing together and they're ready to pounce. Now, they can't pounce unless somebody sets 1 foot on the other side of the stream. Because they say that's the company owns that. You can't set 1 foot on that bank. So they're up there glaring at us. The next day, this is 2 years ago, the next day, posted online were pictures of our group by the military, but they didn't show any pictures of Americans. They only showed pictures of Hondurans, and they put their name and it says they're terrorists. So 2 years ago, there were two people in jail who had protested the mines and the pollution. And we got them released. The judge finally said there's no case here. And then we took them to the embassy to speak. Well, that's not going to happen anymore. But this year,
Took them to the embassy
when
to
we
speak.
got there,
Well, that's not going to happen
these
anymore.
two were out
But
of
this-
jail.
when we
but
got
eight
there,
others
these two were
prison.
out of jail, but
They
8
passed a
others
new
were in
law
prison.
saying
And
we
they
can
passed a new
incarcerate
law
people
saying we can
if we think they're
incarcerate people for
terrorists.
2 years.
What
We
these
think
people did was
they're-
they made an encampment near the fencing for the mines.
terrorists. They're the
and-
fencing for and
The
they
police broke up the encampment. There was some
there was some
fisticuffs.
fisticuffs.
And now these
And
eight
now
guys
these
have
8
spent
guys
the
have
last
spent
2
the
years
last 2
jail
years
with no charges. So we went to the
jail with
river.
no charges.
The families of
We
these
went to
guys
the river.
is there with
The
us.
families of these guys is there with us.
There's a
there's a
polyethylene tube
polyethylene
running on the
tube running
shore,
on the
going
shore,
upstream
going
where the
upstream.
water's a little bit fresher. But still, there's bad pollution of the water. in the town. So
So
we went down into
we
the
went
towns,
down
in
into
the
the
big soccer
towns, in
field.
the big soccer
The
field.
community
The
invited
community
us. We had a
invited
party.
us. We had a party.
marimba
We had a
band.
marimba band.
We had
We
the
had
families of these prisoners. We had about another 100 people. We had a meal.
the families of these prisoners. We had our witnessing of their problem with water.
The water defenders
Defenders
still rotting in jail.
still rotting in jail.
And we met
their
and
families.
we danced with them. I danced with the families and the grandparents of
danced
these
with
guys in
them.
prison.
I danced with the families and the grandparents.
I
of
met
these
two
guys in prison.
girls. They had just finished high
I
school.
met 2 girls. They had just finished high school.
Obviously,
Obviously,
the
the
families are
families are-
totally broke because the breadwinner is in jail. And I said, what would you like
Totally
to
broke
do? Would you like to go to
Breadwinner
college?
was in jail.
And
And
this one girl
one girl
said,
said,
I want to
I
go
want
to
to go to
America.
America.
Very small, petite girl, very pretty girl. I said, you will die.
Very small, petite
You will
girl.
die
very
trying to
pretty
get
girl.
to
I said,
America.
You will die. You will die trying to get to America.
She says, I want to help my family.
She says, I want to help my family.
Later
Later
on,
on,
I had some emails with her.
I had
Turns
some
out
emails
she
with
is
her.
good at
Turns
English.
out she is good at
And she said she wants to take a class to be a cabin attendant.
And
This
this
is
is a 6-month class. You're supposed to pay like $2,000.
And then you hope to get a job as a cabin attendant. Nobody's quite sure what that means. But possibly they'd work
As
in a
a cabin
resort,
Nobody's
change
changed
the
the
bedding
bedding
in
in
a
a resort, right?
Or a cruise ship.
A cruise ship. Something might happen.
So another one said, and she was taller and pretty, she says, I want to be a stewardess on an airplane. And I said, well, that's a good dream. I said, mostly in the Philippines or in America, they already go to college. They're already college graduates, and then they try to become stewardesses. You want to go to college? Well, neither girl had an idea of what they might study in college. And they probably don't have very many role models of what to do to go to college. So since my visit, I am thinking they need a Honduran scholarship program modeled just like ours in the Philippines. I'm wearing the shirt, by the way, of our Philippine scholars. They need that. And they can start with the 10 children of the 8 guys in prison. And we're working, it's a little hard because they do Spanish. We're working on it. Again, it might be $20 a month, goes to that family, the kid goes to school. And so, and then there's some that want to go to college, so that would be more. So I'll be approaching you all at some point. Would you like to sponsor one child whose parents are in jail? Yesterday, I went to a picnic. My son, Greg, works in 2 groups working on immigration. One's called ICOM, one's called iFirm. Don't worry, firm, one's called ICOM. Don't worry about it, but they're dealing with immigration and ICE. And they were the ones up there protesting when they wanted to double the size of a private prison in Elk River for ICE. At the picnic yesterday, I met an immigration lawyer who has spoken to Filipinos a few times, and he knows a little bit about Honduras. And when I explained we got a couple children of the prisoners, well, let me go back. I'll come back to this. So the next day, we went to the prison. So 25 people in a yellow school bus show up with one wife of one of the prisoners, one or two Hondurans who are brave enough to stand up. And we said, we want to see the prisoners. And after some discussion, they let us in. This all went down exactly like the Philippines. The same thing comes out the same way. The prisoners, the prison officials don't know what the hell's going on. They don't want to act like they're hiding the prisoners, etc. So they let us in, and pretty soon the 8 prisoners came walking toward us, and we sat down with them and we talked for 2 hours. By the end of that, we all hugged them, and they didn't have COVID shots. But they were telling stories. We had translators. And then I said to Maya, she's doing Spanish. I said, introduce me. Here's my Lolo, whatever the word in Spanish is. Abuelo. And then I said, I'm from Amnesty International, and we care about prisoners like you defending the environment. I'm from Minneapolis. And this one prisoner beamed, and he started naming all the streets in Minneapolis. Turns out his wife is in Minneapolis, and one of his children is here now. And I promised him that I want to meet them and talk to them and help them in any way we can. And it may even be an immigration question. I don't know. I haven't been able to talk to him yet. So I keep asking, give them my phone number. Let's talk. I don't know why they haven't contacted me yet. So we did that. And of course, we 25 go around and everybody's got their story or their congregation or their human rights group they're from. So we're all sharing that with them. They're so glad to see the wife of a prisoner got to hug her husband. They don't let the wives go into the prisons. So they've been there 2 years and they haven't seen their spouses or their kids. So we got into the Olanchito prison and we saw the prisoners. And my slides would show you that, sorry. Then we had more meetings, had a dinner meeting with the families and with the people in the community. And we're all talking about, what we got to do. Then we met people from the Garifuna. The Garifuna, many of them look as black as Africans because they come from escaped slaves. Their ancestors escaped 500 years ago from Cuba or somewhere. They wound up on the coast.
Also somewhere shipwrecked.
Shipwrecked on the coast. There's
also a Garifuna community.
Oh. Are they in trouble there too?
I don't know, but I visited there. Like you said, they're a big place.
And they got a little Creole. Yep, they got a little Creole and they speak Spanish. And again, I apologize. I got these beautiful close-up pictures. And they were, they're in trouble. They've been minding their own business, growing a crop like okra or something and fishing. 1 year ago, their 4 leaders of their community organization all disappeared. They were grabbed by security forces. Amnesty did 2 urgent actions. Nothing has happened. Early July this year, Amnesty did another one, said, what about these guys? And the letters you wrote today, thank you, are asking that Attorney General, what the hell about those disappeared people, the 4 top leaders. Well, we spoke to the next 2 in line. And they were very, very brave to speak to us. And you could kind of see the look of despair on their face. We gave them some tokens and things. I spoke to one of them more detail about what Amnesty International would try to do. I was hesitant that we would take pictures and put them anywhere. Because if they now know who the next leaders are, they might kill them. But the next day, Radio Progreso has a website, and they talked about our visit. And they said, we spoke with these people. We're North Americans. We're going to bring the story back to America. So it's you kind of screwed if you do and screwed if you don't. But depends on how mad the government is at that moment of whether they will make more of them disappear. They have another problem. Right around, we did get down to the ocean. We did swim a bit in the ocean. Right around the bend is where the drug lords come every night, and they put their stuff on ships to come to America. So they're caught because they can't fish that area. They can't go that direction towards Nicaragua. They can't do that because the drug lords might kill them. So it's a danger situation. That's the Garifuna people, and are very brave and wonderful to talk to us. The real reason the government's mad at them is for resorts. The 12 families have now decided, why don't we build resorts on the Caribbean? Beautiful little sandy beaches. We were on one. Why don't we do it? Well, the Garifuna want to stay there. Well, we could take care of them. By the way, okay, I'll get into the last story about Berta Cáceres. So then we went up to a hilltop area, a little bit beyond the roads, and there were houses that were shacks, more air than substance, you know. There was house built out of sod. These are the Lenca people, and this is part of the area that Berta Cáceres was trying to save from exploitation. So you go in there, and they hosted us, and we had a ceremony, and we spoke to some of their leaders. Some had been in jail, some not. And then they took us on a tour, and we walked through the fields. This is a milpa. We walked through a field of corn about 8 times bigger than this yard. Beautiful corn. Walked a little further, steep hills, beans, squash, other things grown there. You look across the valley, and it is eroded, and there's nothing there because all the rains and all, nobody's farming it. At least with milpa, you go down there and you plant something, and you would try to scratch a living on a steep slope. So they're doing that. And so they showed us around all of their crops and what they're doing. So that was nice to see. And again, you're talking people trying to live on marginal land, trying to scratch a living because they've been booted off the lowlands, especially where the palm oil things went up. Then we got to, this is the last vignette, I guess. We got to women's groups in San Pedro Sula. Now, the women's groups are very strong, very powerful, and I think they're headquartered more in San Pedro Sula, not in the capital, Tegucigalpa, because that's really built up the big buildings and too much surveillance, too much government presence. San Pedro Sula, there's less government presence. So we went to this center for the women's groups. They had about 8 women's groups report to us. One of them is about rapes and femicide, because there's too many husbands killing their wives. Some about children, how to raise children in a situation like that, how to keep them from the gangs, how to save their lives. Many of them about livelihood. So the women's groups are very strong, and they were speaking. I couldn't keep up because I needed a translator in Spanish, but you can't watch a vivid speaker and listen to the translator and try to take notes. You just can't do it. So I can't give you details of what they said, although the one group working on violence, I think Debbie's going to want to talk to a little more with our Native American problem. So we listened to this. I gave them a little plaque made in the Philippines, inlaid bamboo. It said, someday we'll wake up to a free tomorrow. And so we exchange little gifts back and forth. And we heard them, we witnessed their power, their strength, their causes. And if you know any women's groups that want to connect, they can do it. Finally, let me just say that difference from the Philippines to Honduras. Honduras is 1/3 the size of the Philippines. It has 1/3 of its land is arable as the Philippines. Philippines has 10 times more people. Filipinos can't walk to America. So the murder and mayhem in the Philippines is probably 10 times that of the Honduras. It's probably 10 times. The cases of the 8 water defenders are pretty big deal. If they let them go, and they don't really have a thing to convict them of, if they let them go, then people are going to do more of it. If they come up with a kangaroo court and give them 8 years in jail, they might be able to tamp it down, but that isn't going to stop the people who are so hurt and so angry. So it is kind of a big deal. When we were up in this village near where Berta worked, her 2 daughters showed up. Now, they had driven up from Tegucigalpa, the capital, 4 hours just to meet us for half an hour. They brought the good news. That morning, the fifth guy up was convicted of the murder of Berta Cáceres. He actually worked for the company that worked for the one building the dam. His name is David Carrillo. They actually convicted one. They had convicted 4 others, the hitmen, the murderers, but they convicted him for heading up the conspiracy. Amnesty came out with a statement right after that and said, that's a start, but you've really got to do more. You got to keep digging and get further up into the company. If you keep going, you'll be up into the multinational. And then it'll get stinky. Amnesty also did a new action on the disappeared, but on the 8 water defenders, Amnesty called off its work. It said earlier this year, it had another posting saying, what about these 8 guys? They've been in jail 2 years. Well, the government just extended, since I got back home, it just extended their incarceration for 6 more months, kicking the can down the road. Amnesty said, now you've gone and kicked the can down the road another 6 months, but you've said you'll start a trial December 10th. So Amnesty said, stop writing on their behalf. Let's watch and see this trial develop. So that's where Amnesty is. I was so pleased when I got back to learn that they had worked on the 8 disappeared, and they had a couple of emails about those incarcerated. But now they've said, let's hold our breath a while and see what happens in the trial.
The action in our agenda was about the water defenders.
That's about the Garifuna. We wrote today.
The one that's in the agenda that I included.
Oh, yeah, but I don't think it had an action that you can write on, did it? It might have, because they said you can write till October, but then they since then with the 6 month more, Amnesty said we're going to hold off on actions now. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I'm sure the usual thing is most of them don't want to read it. Okay, well, that's what we did in Honduras. We had a superb time, and I will give this talk with slides in about a week to a group called Critical Thinkers. So I'll post that for you. Yeah, Los Pinos. There's a name for it, and there's the local construction crew, and then there's the foreign company. Well, it's called Los Pinos something. So it has a Spanish name. I'm sure there's money from abroad, probably China, but Jenny put out which I distributed, Jenny put out a bit of an analysis of some of that. So they know the names of it, but we haven't got it to the point where you say, write to this multinational and give them hell. Yeah, so, but the other thing is, after they killed Berta and got so much attention, and now 3 bills in Congress all about it, the company withdrew the whole project. So they aren't going to build the dam in the land that Berta was chanting. Now, Berta, they wrote a book for her, and it's a children's book, half in English, half in Spanish. It's called Berta Saves the River. I have one copy. It's going on sale now worldwide. It's an inspiring story of a woman who stood up for human rights and got killed in the process. But it's for children and nice illustrated. So if you're particularly interested, I can get you a way to order that book. So I'm going to keep watching Amnesty. Oh, by the way, when I got back, I got frustrated because I wanted to talk about the Garifuna and the water defenders at the highest levels of Amnesty. I wanted to send them the pictures, right? And the stories. And the country specialist lives in El Salvador. And he says, I'm on vacation and I'm doing things with my family. I won't be back till August. Well, everything I'm sending to him, he comes back an automatic thing saying, no, I'm not working. Then in Washington, the guy that loves Group 37 is Andrew Fandino. He adores us and he helped us so much on our prisoner in the Philippines. I talked to him. I said, who do I talk to about Honduras? And he says, I'll do it. I'll make sure it gets there. And then he started going on vacation. He's from Colombia. So he's got it in his heart about Central and South America.
Should be back now, but he was on the conference call.
Well, okay. Well, maybe he's back now. But then I kept sending these things saying, please send it to London. And I wasn't hearing anything. So I sent it to my Philippine researcher in London. And she says, oh, I got it to the right place. And I said, well, will they acknowledge to me that you've got it? I may have more. I may get stuff tomorrow about another case and about another problem. And then nothing back from London. Finally, a woman named Graciela, I think her last name is Martinez, she got back to me and she says, thank you, I've got this, we're watching this, we're very interested in Honduras. So I think she's probably Honduran. And I got her email now, so I got someone to go to. So it finally worked, but you know, I'm telling my friends in Honduras and these human rights groups, I'm saying, you can hear anything on Honduras, let me know, I'll get it up to London right away. So, and plus, they sent to me the Amnesty actions on Honduras. Dumb me, I kept going to the Amnesty site, I wasn't finding it, but I did, you know, I've now seen these. So Amnesty been doing some things on Honduras. But it's pretty hopeless, as is the Philippines. Now, the second part of my talk would be on the Philippines. And I was going to show you the movie of the murder of my friend Meg's cousin, Rex Fernandez, attorney. It's got filmed because a storefront camera was looking down at his car, which stopped for traffic, and then the murderer came up and killed him. Yeah, it's on the internet. I was going to show you some scenes from that in case you want to see how they kill people in the Philippines. And I had other slides about him, and I'll just mention the two other friends killed. One was the father of a scholar. He graduated college 15 years ago. His father had been imprisoned. He was red tagged, and he's teaching organic farming methods. I didn't think they'd still mad at him because he'd been out of jail about 5 years, but somebody went into his house and murdered him 3 months ago. And then a mother of a current scholar who's in college. I don't know if you know Nancy Pearson. She works at the Center for Victims of Torture. She's the sponsor for him. The mother was a poet and a journalist, and we worked on her husband, Erickson Acosta. He got imprisoned trying to document farming abuses in Samar. He got imprisoned, got in kidney trouble. I was in Manila for a while, and they had me participate in a press conference to say that we're watching this. Now, Amnesty hates this when I go on a press conference and I say, I'm a member of Amnesty International and we think this is wrong. Amnesty hates that, by the way, but I do it anyway. So we got her husband out of jail, and she and the husband were reporting on the biggest hacienda in the Philippines. It's called Hacienda Luisita. It's north of Manila. It's owned by the Aquino family, as in Cory Aquino, former president. But they never got around to land reform. They never got around to peace and quiet. And when the farmers that were working it had a protest, they sent in military and they shot 5 people to death and usual stuff. So she and her husband are reporting on these farmers' movements, on the protests and the reactions, the crackdowns. Well, that stuff stopped about a year ago, and I didn't hear anything more from them. And then it turned out the mother of our scholar went to join the resistance in Negros, which is the next island over. She joined the NPA, the New People's Army. Now, she is a writer and a journalist, so she may have been in the propaganda department, I don't know. But there was a military encounter a month ago, and there was a shootout. One officer got killed. 2 people of the New People's Army were wounded. She was one of them, and then they executed her on the spot. So nobody raises much of a stink about this because they joined the armed opposition to the government. But I know she was an idealist. I met her, and I'm bummed. And now we're going to see if her son will continue in school or not. And the third one was attorney Rex Fernandez. He was killed about 3.5 weeks ago. And Rex, bless him, he's been my drinking buddy for 30 years. So when I go there, he and I tie one on and we sit and we talk deep politics. Rex could have been killed 30 years ago, as was his mentor, his teacher. So when they told me Rex was killed, I'm like, oh, they finally got him. Rex posted a lot on Facebook. Half of it was jokes that I put on Facebook, and he repeats.
But he's the one. No, he's not the one who sent us this stuff.
So, any rate, we're in good contact all the time. And he put on Facebook, he went on a hunger strike because he owns a condominium, about an 8-story building. I mean, he owns an apartment in a condominium. And the managers were jacking up the fees, the monthly fees. And he thought that wasn't fair. And he's a lawyer. So he was after them. He finally pitched a tent in front of the condominium, and he's going on a hunger strike. He's sleeping in the tent. Well, he had to, because they cut off his water when he wouldn't pay the fees. They cut off water. So he's down there and he's having fun with it, and looking pretty ragged, sleeping in a tent, a little bit ragged. And so he posted on Facebook a note, and he said, there's 4 people want to kill me. And these were not the government, although the government recently was red tagging him as being communist. These were 4 wealthy people in Cebu that he either had cases related to them or the owners of this condominium. He put their names there. These people want to kill me. And a week later, he's dead. So he was probably the 64th lawyer killed in the Philippines. 57 of them killed directly from their work on human rights and political prisoners. Rex is in the other 7. He's probably killed by a rich guy. And it was a pretty smooth assassination, and they probably won't catch the guy. So I've talked to Rex's widow a couple times. And we're going to do, in a couple of weeks, we'll do a little memorial, local one with Paul and Meg about Rex Fernandez. There were 7 memorials in Cebu, 7 evenings. Human rights groups, including Karapatan, got together with Zoom meetings. I spoke at one of them, but 7 groups got together and said that he had helped them tremendously for 35 years.
How many people here have met Rex?
Yeah, we brought him here.
Three.
Once he spoke to our chapter, to the university, and one time we took him and his wife, we went and toured the Grand Canyon. Great guy, really great guy, great sense of humor. So, anyway, 3 in 3 months. That's
Just a quick question about Honduras. Historically, the Catholic Church has dominated and they're very powerful in Honduras and Central America. What is the Catholic Church doing now for the people?
Yeah, I do not know. At the end of our trip, there was a mass by Padre Mello. He's a Jesuit priest. He founded Radio Progreso. And he's had death threats forever. 2019, we were marching through a town called El Progreso. We were marching through the street and it all came off good. There was no incident. There were about 150 people and we're carrying signs that say Fuera JOH. That means flee Hernandez. He's the president of Honduras. We're carrying these signs through town. I made it a point to stand as near as I could to Father Mello in case a sniper was going to kill him. He might see an American nearby and might hold off. He's had so many threats. He has spoken to congressional committees here in the States. And so he's a prime target, and he's Catholic. So many Catholics there remember Oscar Romero. He's the hero for the whole Central America. And many of them know about Father Mello and his work. So a lot of it is they're exposing the crimes and the corruption. But I would have to say, like in the Philippines, the top hierarchy doesn't say a lot. They still go and say and give the weddings and the rights to those rich people who are doing that to their own people. So we didn't have a whole lot of interactions with the religious, but all our group was religious people other than me. And they all going back to their churches and they're all going to tell the story. So yeah, you would think it could do more. It should do more than just pass out sacraments. Yeah. Well, to put down the Catholics, they have a thing called confession, and you just murdered somebody and go and confess it. It's forgiven. So it should be, you can never kill again. Now we forgive you. But it's not that way. So at any rate, the Catholics can murder people just as well as anybody. It's a tough scene. Mike, you got a question? You got a question about Honduras?
I always admire what you're doing down there and in the Philippines. So
You mute, Mike?
I think I unmuted, didn't I?
Mike, are you on mute?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, we hear you.
I'm concerned that how can we get the US government to do more about the crime of Hillary Clinton's conspiracy to overthrow the elected government?
Yeah, let's get our Secretary of State.
Blinken.
Blinken and nod. Let's get him to do something right.
Doesn't look likely, does it? Because he was part of it.
Help when she went to Guatemala and Mexico and said, stop coming. And she said vaguely, we're going to make your governments better so you don't have to come. Well, no, not when you continue the military aid. Are they going to change their ways? Yeah.
Don't forget in Honduras, right, is that you have this intense connection between the government, the industry, between the military.
And the
All
landowners.
three of those work together, and the U.S. is in bed with all three of them.
Yeah, Wilbur says the U.S. is in bed with the government, the military, the landowners, the rich people, corporations.
The whole corporation, right,
Right.
is U.S. owned. The U.S. Congress is funding the military and the capitalists. So,
Yep. Yep.
when there was the coup there, the U.S. completely relinquished to that coup and let the elected president lead.
Yeah. Wilbur points out the coup, the U.S. went along with it. Yep.
The secret ties to the U.S. and Honduras, unlike a lot of places that had revolutions in Central America, Honduras has been unsuccessful, and they are under the U.S. thumb. Created extreme poverty there because of the U.S. corporations have destroyed the local economy by making it a cash economy.
Yeah.
Landowners and any kind of land reform there has totally been squashed.
I don't know if Wilbur's microphone is off too, but he's pointing out the extreme poverty in Honduras. Yep. Yep.
I can hear that. Thank you. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Capitalism seems to be the game of all these people. Now, when I hear the Build Back Better program of Biden, I'm totally excited for America. But of course, it doesn't begin to brush into foreign policy or the US military. Yeah. So there it is. Hi, Greg. Greg's here.
I don't see it.
Okay, yeah.
Well, hi, Greg. Like to talk to you sometime.
Hi. I'm here.
Okay.
See you.
Well, my little laptop won't do a PowerPoint and Zoom at the same time, so we went without the Zoom. But I'll be giving the talk this week